Hello and welcome to the 2023 NYU Game Center Showcase. Today we are excited to present 12 games that will be part of the showcase later this week. So this is, I guess, what you would call a streaming preview of our live event, at which we'll have dozens and dozens of games, including, I think, 3 dozen games by our graduating student and another couple dozen games that have been created in classes here at the NYU Game Center over the last year. I'm Naomi Clark. I am the chair of the program, and sitting with me here are some of our faculty, Professor Charles Pratt, Professor Laura Clark, Professor Sean Pierre, who will be hosting this evening's celebration of the new games, each taking turn, thank you very much, interviewing the developers and looking at a live preview of the games that you can enjoy if you show up here in person at the NYU Game Center on Thursday night this week. If you are lucky enough to be close enough to downtown Brooklyn that you can take a train to this building we're in right now and come and enjoy some free drinks and other refreshments, as well as more games that you can possibly play in 4 hours, then come on by. You can find information on our, on the bottom of this stream page probably about the event, how to RSVP, and what else should we say here at the top of the hour? I'm really excited about this year's crop of games. Every year it's like watching a bunch of little seedlings sprout, and you don't even know like what kinds of weird and beautiful and thorny and like disgusting, gloppy, droopy, poisonous, dangerous, and lovely smelling flowers might burst out of those leaves that we've been looking at anxiously all year. But this is the moment when they all sort of trot out on stage and do a little pirouette like little flowers do. And then we were all excited and we clap. So we really hope you will join us, not only in playing in person if you can come by, but also just like giving a shout out to these student developers when you see their stuff on our stream. We'll also be sure to tune into our social media over the week, as we'll be sort of putting out some previews of a lot more than the 12 games than you see here. All right, but I think, without further ado, we'll sort of kick it off with the first few games. Who's interviewing first? Sean. All right, so Sean, you'll be taking us into the first round of interviews right after this break. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Sean, and I am here with...
Hi, I'm Phoebe.
Phoebe, and one of the members of the team that made Project Volition.
Yeah, I was the narrative designer and the project manager.
And your other teammates?
My other teammates are Ari, who did general level design and system management, and my other teammate is Maria, who did animation and visual arts.
Awesome. So can you start off by telling us a little bit about the game? What is Project Volition all about?
Project Volition is a love letter to our time on the internet. All of our teammates spend more time touching a mouse than touching grass. It's a love letter to the RPG Maker horror scene, to the rising Y2K aesthetics, and to our love of just being on the internet. So we decided to combine all of that to create a sort of game inspired by creepypasta and other little internet oddities.
That's really, really, really great. And you mentioned RPG Maker. So why RPG Maker? What advantages, I guess, did the game have by being created in RPG Maker?
RPG Maker is basically its own framework. So you have a small set to start with, and you can do a lot with it, but it doesn't require a heavy amount of programming or adding your own kinds of things. So it helped to streamline the process a lot better than starting maybe from scratch in something like Unity 2D.
And there's a community around Game Maker, right?
Around RPG Maker, yes, there is.
RPG
no
Maker,
worries.
Yes,
yeah, there is a community around RPG Maker. A bunch of really popular like horror games that a bunch of kids played kind of in the early 2010s, including Eve and Mad Father and stuff, kind of inspired this. Probably the biggest RPG Maker game right now is Omori, which is a smash hit in the indie horror scene right now. So that's one reason why we wanted to lean in on that. A lot of us played those games when we were younger, so we wanted to give it to some kids now.
Yeah, so and you mentioned that it was a narrative game, and all writing is difficult, but writing, I think that it's really difficult to pull off as horror and also comedy. And you mentioned creepypasta and all that. Can you tell us a bit about the writing process and how you decided to lean away maybe from tropes and cliches and make it feel really like a good story?
Well, we started it with just these character designs. They're all, if you can see, they're color-coded. They're each part of the no-signal colors when you turn on a television. And from there, we kind of just thought, what is one kind of person that you knew maybe in MySpace in 2009 or on like Skype or DeviantArt, and we kind of plugged that into each of the characters. So we have one who's like a super like peppy girl, but secretly she loves to play Call of Duty and Counter-Strike. We have a yellow electric kind of emo kid who has a soft spot for photography and stuff like that. So it's a lot. One thing about RPG Maker is the love for the characters. So we put a lot of emphasis on the characters and kind of the relationships between them, because once you start to break apart those relationships, it puts more emphasis and emotion for the players to actually care.
So let's move to the gameplay a little bit. You have a status mechanic, and if you take a look at the trailer, you see status in the upper right-hand corner. Can you tell us a bit about how it works and how it influences the way you play the game?
Yeah, so the status, there are 3 different types of status. There's calm, tense, and then question mark, question mark, question mark. Interacting with different weird objects, whether they be glitches in the real world or maybe strange colors or certain terminals, will lower your status. And the lower your status, you will see this glitch effect appear on the screen. Some colors might start appearing in the environment. And your status will help you to enter different doors. So there's a certain amount to heighten your status, and you can do that by talking to your friends that are scattered about the building, or you can do it by obviously the lowering of the status. So you can't get to everything in one playthrough. There is only a certain amount of times you can heighten it, but there's plenty of times to lower it, so certain things might be blocked off. So it kind of also encourages to try to play through it a few more times.
So me lowering my status is lowering my emotional
Yes,
state.
you're basically, the lowering of the status makes you kind of more anxious and allowing kind of this almost like wormhole of kind of the cyber to come into your vision and your mental health.
How would I lower my status in the real world space? Like right now, if I had to lower my status.
If you had to lower your status right now, staying up for, hours probably on your computer looking at a blue light that you definitely shouldn't have, playing different kind of horror games, or just seeing something that kind of puts you in a state of shock are some ways you would probably lower your status in the real world.
Okay. Might try this out later just to see. Yeah.
And then you can talk to your friends to, heighten it, so it's perfectly fine.
Or probably lower it. I don't know, with the friends I have. Who knows? So you mentioned, visually there's a bunch of glitches and things happening, and there's also a lot of interesting imagery that you have in the game, sometimes with wires and flesh, right? Can you talk a little about that? And also, I'm really curious about, are there things that you had to leave out because they were just too weird or too creepy?
So one of our biggest inspirations was Serial Experiments Lane, which is a 1998 anime that has entered the kind of popular sphere. So that's a lot about kind of questioning like what's real, what's digital, the fusion of that, and that was a huge inspiration for Volition. So that's where some of the Wire kind of inspiration comes from. Otherwise, I'm a huge fan. I think flesh is one of the easiest ways to skeeve somebody out. So there's a lot of that. If you see at the end, there is a mess of the flesh, the body, and the wire. That's really, really exciting. But kind of all that together, because also the deeper we have technology integrated into our lives, the more we kind of just become one. So eventually the wires and the cyber and then the flesh and blood will become one thing. So yeah.
Oh, that's unsettling. Yeah. So, I mean, well, before we run out of time, can you tell us what you plan to do next with you and the team and where we might be able to find the game? Yeah.
So you can see us at teamwirelore.uwu.ai or also catskit.itch.io/volition, where you can play the game and also hear more about our team. We're going to bring it so that our main character Clara and Blue here will start going into the cyber. RPG Maker has a really cool, like almost 3D dungeon crawler kind of framework, kind of like old Shin Megami Tensei games that is underutilized that we hope to include. We'll have some kind of combat against some fleshy cyber mechanics and all sorts of things. So hopefully you guys can figure out what happened to Clara and her friends in the upcoming chapters of Volition.
How many chapters are there available now?
There's currently only chapter 0 is what we're calling this. We're hoping to maybe do a total of 5. But yeah, so that's all we've got.
Right. And any final words for your teammates?
Well, I love my teammates very much, and I'm very glad that I was able to have them here. They're all very, very shy, though, so they couldn't come. But I'm thankful for being able to work with such a chill and also talented group of people.
Yeah, you're a great team. I was, professor in Capstone, and you all really did an amazing job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, and I guess we'll be seeing the next guest soon. Here with the Signal Creek team. Hi, Signal Creek team. Can you all introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Max. This is Dominic, who is not present physically but is in this ball.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ashley.
Hi, I'm S or Sarah.
Hi, I'm Erna. And hello, I'm Kaz.
Hi, welcome. All right, so to start us off, just tell us a little bit about Signal Creek. What is it about?
S, you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. So Signal Creek is a 2D pixel art top-down RPG that is centered around Noor, excuse me, who is a 22-year-old college student who comes back to the town of Signal Creek, New Jersey, where she's from, to visit the abandoned mall that she was so used to visiting when she was growing up. It's set to be demolished in a short period of time, so she's coming back to kind of reminisce about the past. She bumps into her professional mentor, Miss Suwan, and her younger brother's best friend, Nick, and together they get trapped on the 3rd floor of the mall, and she has to help them and herself reconcile with their past in order to escape.
Excellent. So it's a narrative experience, right?
Yes.
So you all, during Capstone class, you all told me that you were all narrative designers for the experience. So I'm really interested about the narrative design process, especially with everyone saying that they're a narrative designer. How did you balance that, especially with all the other responsibilities that you have? How can everyone equally contribute to narrative and also do programming and game design and sound design and everything else? So yeah, talk about that a little bit.
So that's a really cool question. Our jumping off point for even coming up with the idea was thank you to Richard Lemerchan for Playful Production Process. Very good book. But basically, what he talks about a lot is how to come up with blue sky ideas, brainstorming, ideation. And so it is very much like we all are together in very early stages of brainstorming. And we basically spitball ideas, and we're not precious about them at first. And then we go into the prototyping phase where we just kind of have vague ideas of our characters, and we bring them all, we come up with these prototypes individually. We bring them all when we meet, and we say, what do I like about this one? What do I like about this one? And then past that point, we get into coming up with like the finer details of our characters. And for that, we each drew from our personal experiences, and we found things that we have in common as designers and storytellers, and things where we are unique. Yeah.
And if I could just jump in a little, I think it's important to remember that narrative design is not just the story and characters as well. There's a lot of narrative design that goes into environment, into the sprites, and even things like the quests, and choices. So I think, for example, balancing between art and writing, for example, there's a lot of narrative design you can do for environment, or even the way the level is played out. For example, I think the earlier version of the mall was placed very differently because we realized a mall is actually circular, and the feeling of being lost, that's telling a story to the way the player moves through a space. So we got creative, to say the least.
And I think also in terms of splitting up the work with the fact that we all want to do narrative design, that we're all narrative designers, it was actually not as hard as it would seem balancing with all the responsibilities, because clearly it's a very text heavy game. So we all were able to step in, do at least some of the writing, and then bounce off each other, and have a couple people do the editing and keep it consistent, but also everyone kind of had the chance to be able to do that.
Excellent. That's wonderful. You talked a little bit about the characters, but I actually want to know a little bit more about them, especially Miss Swan, because clearly Miss Swan is older than the other characters, and as far as I know, everyone here on the team is not as old as Miss Swan. so writing the younger characters might have been easier, but yeah, tell us a little bit about the characters. Well, who was the influence behind Miss Swan, and how did you go about writing a character like that? Someone who's, I guess, out of the age range of everyone here.
I guess for me personally, when I was thinking about what makes Miss Suwan her work ethic and the fact that she let it consume her life is something that I personally saw in my mom. And I've seen my mom grow a lot over time. And so when I was personally empathizing with her, that's what stuck out to me.
Yeah. And in terms of her background, we have friends who are Thai Chinese or come from a similar background, so you're able to kind of pull from them and ask them advice on hey, is this thing what would she have done in this place or in her past, in these specific moments of time when she was a child or when she was growing up, what would she have what would she have done, what would she have talked about, what toys would she have played with, that kind of thing, and that all kind of influenced the narrative along the way.
Yeah, and we also thought it was important to emphasize how different age ranges can interact with each other in meaningful ways, and they can all change each other and learn from each other despite, the huge age gaps between these characters.
That's really, really, really cool. So let's talk a little bit about the visual style and the inspiration for the setting. Is Signal Creek a real place? Is the mall real? Have you been there? But also just the general inspiration behind the visuals for this game.
So Signal Creek itself is not a real town in New Jersey. The mall is not a real mall, but there are a large amount of malls in New Jersey. A couple of us are from New Jersey and have been to a lot of those malls. So we have a lot of experience having gone there. We've also had a lot of international experience with like going to malls around the world and kind of seeing the different ways they're laid out and what's similar, what's different, what are experiences that span internationally related to malls, and kind of pulling from that and like putting, getting those influences in there. So even though we didn't all travel to a mall, unfortunately we didn't have the time or the wherewithal, but we were, we pulled up from our own experience, how did it feel to be going to like these malls in the middle of Jersey?
Yeah, and we also we really thought about like stores that a lot of people like our age and like people who are, maybe a little bit younger, like also have heard of and like have experience with. Like we thought a lot about like, how do we design an experience that, obviously having like very weird elements, but something that's also like very nostalgic, because nostalgia is like a huge part of our game.
So actually, I want to talk a little bit now about the play testing for this game, because I think seeing it through the 2 semester Capstone, I think it does a really good job of resonating with real life situations and connecting with people on a bunch of different levels. So I'm really interested in hearing about how people came away from this game after playtesting. How are they feeling emotionally? Was it different? Was it all over the place?
Yeah. So I teach middle schoolers, and they were very helpful with the playtesting process. So like every week I would show them like a version of the game just to see like how kids, like people younger than us, feel towards it, because they are like super into like RPGs and they see it from a different lens than like us developers do, and even people who are in the game design sphere would. And we got a lot of good feedback about like things that they want. Like something that was really funny was right after the intro, they were like, when is the violence gonna come in? And we're like, okay, we see what they're interested in. That's cool.
Or I have a crush on Noor.
Which was
like
very,
that
very
was really satisfying.
We peaked with that one.
So then you put a bunch of guns in the game, right?
Yeah. Quest. If time allowing. But yeah, no, it was very helpful to see like what they wanted to see, and just to say like some of their suggestions got in the game, and we were very grateful for it.
Great. So I think we are out of time. So real quick, can you tell us where we can find the game and the team, I guess?
snacktimegames.itch.io/Signal Creek.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you in a bit.
Okay, look. The official statement of the NYPD at this point is that the investigation is ongoing.
There's a lot you don't know about my dad.
You spoke to Jim.
I knew him better than anybody.
Rumors going around saying Mr. Evergreen was something of a confirmed bachelor.
You aren't gonna get anything salacious about Robert out of me.
I really respect the local press,
I know nothing, no questions.
Off the record. I mean, look, you don't have to lie, but you don't have to tell the whole truth either.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I am here with the team of Report on the Death of Robert Evergreen. Hi, team.
Hello.
All right, everyone, can you introduce yourselves, please?
Sure. My name is Sarah Doherty Granoff. I am the project manager and one of the narrative designers for this team.
Hi, my name is Jackie Murray. I am another narrative designer on the team, and I'm also a gameplay designer.
I'm Darcy Gutierrez. I am the art director as well as programmer.
My name is Ashley Eliasse, and I am the main programmer.
And my name is Nick Portugal, and I am one of the audio designers on the team.
Awesome. Welcome. Oh, and I guess if everyone didn't notice, this is the narrative block for Capstone games. So yeah, tell us about the game. What is it all about?
Yeah. So Report on the Death of Robert Evergreen is a narrative journalism game that takes place in New York City in the early 1990s. You play as the editor-in-chief of a small, struggling newspaper called The Local Rag, and it is your job to interact with the retro computer interface of the company's computers and listen to audio interviews that have been conducted with people who are relevant to a story that your team will be writing about. Then you get to decide how you would like each of those people, and thus the whole story, to be portrayed on tomorrow's headline article. Then you get to see the article that your writers create, and then move on to a second story and a third. The two are finished right now. The third one is planned to be completed over this summer.
Awesome. That's really cool. Did you want to add? Okay, what's there? Okay, great. So we see a newspaper game, and we're listening to stories. But you mentioned that we are an editor, or an editor-in-chief, and not an investigative journalist. Can we talk about why you decided to go along the editor route and not the investigator route, not the person writing the article necessarily?
Sure. So part of this came out of some feedback that we had received from our gameplay. Essentially, our gameplay, when we first made this game, was largely the same. You listen to these audios, you select various options, but the player was a reporter. And in part, first of all, we had the hardest time convincing people that they weren't in fact a detective, but were a reporter. But also that it felt to players like a very detached way to be writing an article. It didn't really feel as though they were impacting it. And we realized that it made a lot more sense, but they responded very, very well to the gameplay, essentially. And we realized that a way we could preserve that gameplay that people were responding really well to, while also having it make more sense to the player, was to switch the player's role from reporter, from investigative reporter, to editor. And with that switch, your decisions became less about, seeking the truth per se, and more about deciding how the story will be portrayed.
That's a really good answer. I like that answer. It's a really great choice, I think, for the direction of the game. And we're talking about a lot of listening to voice recordings. I think among all the Capstone games, maybe most of the games this semester, this year, it probably has the most voice acting. Can you talk about the voice acting process? What was it like? I know some of you did a lot of the voice acting, and then there must have been a really cool thing to do. But yeah, tell us about the workflow for recording and maybe direction and how you got that into the game.
Yeah, I can talk about that because I guess that goes into more audio territory. So a lot of it, at first was just figuring out who we wanted for the first story, and just given where we were at the time and budget that we had with the game, we decided that we wanted to make it within our own designers, and we also felt like it was a nice Easter egg in that sense. It was fun. It was very fun.
I'm sorry, did I spoil that by saying that you were in the game?
Oh, I mean.
I mean, we're in the trailer.
Yeah, we're in the trailer. You can hear our voices. You don't know, but I knew my dad better than anyone. Yeah, as a slight spoiler. But as we wanted to go in the later stories, and definitely we wanted to up the ante. We wanted to be true to that. This is just wasn't something that we were just doing as ourselves, or something that's a school project, or we wanted to make it feel actually real and legit for players. So we went on Fiverr. We looked up people who filled the roles correctly, and we ended up finding a bunch of really good people who were very very flexible in their schedules, and were able to churn out a bunch of amazing recordings. For that, and basically the rest was history.
Oh, if I may add
Yeah,
really
of course.
quickly, in terms of the voice acting, it was a very iterative process. It was always kind of getting the audio clips back and then being like, is this the feeling that we want to evoke? And so that went through a big process, especially narratively, in terms of like how the scripts were written. Because I guess y'all like know this process best, but in terms of, you know, having realistic audio, we had to kind of improvise or they had to improvise and then record themselves doing that and then write the script based on what the recording said and then pass that over to the voice actors.
Yeah, to sort of explain that, the first pass of the scripts, the first version that we had of them, the scripts read well, but they didn't sound great. When somebody said them out loud, they didn't really sound like the sorts of things that people just say organically. And so we had to go back through and do a lot of kind of interesting other stuff to try and get them to sound a little bit more natural. And yeah, like Darcy said, we would kind of just speak freely on the topic that the character would be speaking about, record ourselves doing that, write down what we had said, and then keep in a lot of the ums, a lot of the ands, a lot of the repeated things.
Yeah, and then when we passed it off to the voice actors, we would also tell them, you know, you don't need to read this verbatim. You know, this doesn't have to be exactly as it's written. So then after we got that audio back and thought, you know, okay, this is good, we then also would have to, you know, then transcribe what they had recorded.
So, yeah, that sounds like real back and forth process, but it sounds really, really great. I think y'all did a great job with the end result of it. So you should be happy with all the hard work you did. Thank you. So we're seeing a lot of digital gameplay, but the game actually exists in a non-digital format. Can you tell us about that version of this game?
Sure. So the non-digital version of the game, the exhibition version as we call it, was actually the original version in a lot of ways and is also kind of our idealized way to play the game. Instead of having the audios available on the digital interface that you see, you have physical cassette tapes with those audios and an actual cassette player, and you know, you listen to this with headphones. You have paper with the transcripts printed on it. You have a notepad for you to take notes on. And it's great for kind of really bringing people into that vibe of that era. And also just, you know, do you want to play the game or do you want to play the game and press big chunky buttons and play with cassettes? And generally people answer that they would rather do the latter.
You said there is an issue with cassettes. Sometimes people have issues with them.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we have only ever encountered, I think, maybe 2 people who could load a cassette correctly the first time, ourselves included in that, actually.
I think I did it. Oh, no, go. Real
90s,
quick, yeah.
90s tech is hard.
Excellent. Well, I think we're out of time. So just real quick, what's next for the game?
So we are going to be working on the 3rd story, as Jackie said, over the summer. We will not spoil that story. I will give a hint, which is to say that it centers around a high school level varsity basketball game that took place as the halftime entertainment of a Knicks 76ers game at Madison Square Garden in January of 1993. If you know what that is, I have given the entire thing away. But if you don't, I hope you play the game and find out.
Excellent. And you can play it on the localrag.itch.io/report on the death of Robert Evergreen. Thank you. All right. And next up, thank you, team. And yeah, next up we have our thesis, first set of thesis games. So stay tuned for that.
Hello. What's up, YouTube? So I'm here with the Monostrophe team. These next three are going to be MFA games, so it's a little different now. So this is a game with meaning, which is a rare thing for a video game to have. So what are the first thing I want to ask you all? Let's introduce ourselves. So I'm Laura Clark. I teach a number of the graduate classes here, and you all are. I'll pass you the candle as you introduce yourselves. That'll be nice. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yuanfan.
My name is Luke.
And this is Evie. I'm Toby.
And I'm Cindy.
You can hang on to the candle for now. Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to ask you all about is just like, what are the main themes that you're dealing with in this game? Because there's kind of a lot. There's a lot going on in the trailer. So yeah, just maybe start off with that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
yeah, so what we're trying to talk about in this game is mostly about this idea of what is the true free will. Or do you really have true freedom, even if we all as human beings have free will, right? And it's kind of like, when we are bounded by worldly constraints, and it's not really like we can do literally whatever that we want to do, right? So this game, you play as pretty much yourself, or a form of, existence, that you go on this journey of the body, the soul, and the will in order to see what you define as the true free will, and that's what it's about.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, video games are all about constraints. You're bound by all kinds of things. So it's an interesting medium to explore those sorts of topics, I think. So in the first scene, you can see in the trailer, you're kind of like a snug. You're in a snug little machine, kind of going around in a very orderly circle. But then in the second area, it opens up into this kind of like terrifying, majestic, every direction seems like it's up sort of space. So what is your approach to building out the world, would you say?
If I can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so at the beginning, I want each level and things to have a distinct art style and using different architecture language, and have a different color themes, and more importantly, to convey different emotions. So you can see it in our trailer and gameplay video, that the first level is about in the story is about the body part of the game. So what is a body? So I think maybe it's a mechanical, it's a code, and it's have infinity loop, and it's have a very huge world structure. So that's the first part. And the second level, it's more spiritual. It's more heaven-like. It's like a brighter space. So and also I wanted to experiment. We wanted to experiment with with interesting mechanics. So we wanted to apply a different gravity. So that's maybe not a standard understanding of heaven, maybe So we try to use a different gravity mechanic. So you're in the inner side of the wheel. So the gravity is always changing. The angles are always changing. Of course I need to thank the Cindy and Luke to enable that the very strange gravity. So yeah, so in the future level, we wanted to apply this method and to keep all the levels to have different styles. Yeah, that's all.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels very cathedral-like, but in every direction, it's wild. So you've been so I watched this project grow over a couple of semesters, and you've been pretty closely guarded about what the overall narrative is supposed to be. But what do you hope that people get from sort of engaging with the game? If there's
Yeah, so like I said before, oh, thank you again. Like I said before, the game is talking about what is true free will, right? Does true free will bring you true freedom, even when you have it? So this idea is that, like a lot of the times, because, we're still living in this world and bounded by constraints. So of course we can never really have the real or true freedom to do whatever that we want, right? So what we want the players to get out of this is that, you know, we want them to, of course, based on the visuals, to feel like this game looks good, looks pretty. But then aside from that, we want them to really think about if, you know, based on the mechanics and the things that we have in the game, if they can get this feeling that, you know, it's not that you are playing as any of these characters, but this game is more about you as a, you know, human being, as a person, individual, about your thought, you know, and to bring you really like trying to extract you out of like what you see on the screen. And that's what we're, you know, aiming to, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so I was wondering, I guess related to that, like you embody a number of different sort of avatars, and you see that a lot of them in the trailers. If there's, in particular, we're meant to represent certain things. You mentioned the first part being about the body, so it's kind of more machine-like. But the other ones, yeah, are those meant to be a particular representation of something?
Are you referring to like the characters?
The actual character models, yeah.
Then Evie, do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, so initially our idea for designing those characters are make them abstract and make them emotionless, just to let them blend in the whole mechanical world. But however, with the participate of the player, like they can be brought back to life. So this part really highlights how important player is, and also we want to tell the difference between physical soul and spiritual, physical body and spiritual soul, by like designing robots and soul in different forms. Like that.
Nice. And there's a secret third thing. There's like a whole separate third section that has yet to sort of like, yeah, I haven't seen much of it. So what are your that you just witnessed the body failing? Yeah. So I guess we're back with. I guess my final question, which is about the third section of the game, and your sort of continued work on that, and like what that's meant to be like.
Yeah, so like I said before, our game is about 3 levels: body, soul, and the mind. So the last level will be about the level of the mind, and we think it's going to be way more abstract than the level 1 and 2, and we think it's going to combine and, you know, elaborate on the mechanics that we had from level 1 and 2, and definitely visuals and world building will, you know, take a different approach as well to really make players feel like, you know, what you see, where you are right now, it's different from where you were before. It's like a higher realm and dimension. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I think that's all that I wanted to ask you all. Thank you all for being on the stream. And yeah, definitely everybody come on Thursday if you can and play Monostrophe.
And can I just thank all the instructors,
yes,
Laura?
please, yeah.
We want to thank Naomi, Maddie, and Danny for, you know, giving us all the, you know, feedback, help, instructions in the last year that we've been working on this game. I want to thank each and our music composers as well for, you know, working on all of our music, and Zach Jones for working on the sound, and all the playtesters. And thank you. Come play our game on Thursday. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Due to budget constraints, we have slightly less space for this particular presentation. So I'm here with the Lime Juice team. Do you all want to introduce yourselves really quickly?
Yeah. I'm Ian. I'm the producer, programmer, and also tech artist of the team.
I'm Daniel. I'm the programmer in this team.
I'm Jacob. I'm 2D and 3D artist in the team.
I'm Haley. I'm the clever artist.
No? Okay. All right. Well, there's some disagreements, but that's okay. We'll move on. So I will say, at first glance, this game seems a little sort of like childlike in its presentation. There's little illustrations and things like that. But it changes as you go. But does this game have any particular relationship to childhood or wonder, maybe? Would you say?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's sort of baked in our design process. I think from most of the interactions and animations we came up with, they're all tied to our personal experiences. I think especially going into later levels, we tried to keep the interactions a bit more abstract so that we just have more room to work with and we can come up with weirder and more personal stuff. Whereas in the earlier one that you're probably seeing right now on the screen that I can't see, we're basing most of the interactions from a real street scene, which was sort of limiting. That's why we sort of moved to a more abstract approach.
Nice. So, well, all three of these scenes are quite different as they move through. There's an underwater one, and then there's a sort of fairly darker one. What is this I guess main thought process behind the arc of these scenes?
Yeah, well, since our game is all about a kid sitting at the bus station picking up a stranger's sketchbook and imagine, so we all let us being like a kid to think and come up with those delightful 2D animations and imaginations for the first level. But still, the whole thing is based on the realistic bus station and street theme, which is a huge constraint for us to come up with more creative imaginations. So we decided to make the second and third level to be more abstract. So, for example, some of us really like ocean theme and sea animals. So we decided to design an underwater theme and post a lot of fish animations and even a whale bubble in that thing. Well, for the third level, all of us have afraid of a lot of weird little things in our childhood. So we decide, for example, like the ginger man or closet, which is really weird. So we just decided to put those things in the third scene and make it a dark alley, so the player can overcome those fears during their playthrough. And that's the whole process of the street level design.
So for those just maybe watching the trailer and they haven't seen the game before, obviously, how do you want to just describe how it actually works? What are you doing as you play the game?
Yeah, so the gameplay, you play as this kid who's waiting at the bus stop. Unfortunately, you missed your ride, so you have a bunch of time to burn. But you pick up this random sketchbook on the ground and decided to read through it. And the way that the gameplay works is that you will pull these 2D sketches from the book, and then as you pull them into 3D environments of those imaginary worlds that you're probably seeing on the screen, they turn into animations, and that's when they begin to interact with each other and form little pieces of stories.
How many? These are all individual animations, yeah?
Yeah, they're all hand-drawn.
Yeah, so how many are there at this point, do you think?
We have 29 different sketches. And in terms of the amount of animations, I want to say well over 200. It could be a lot more, but at least 200.
Clever. So you all have a pretty rare collaborative bond. What's it like being so close?
Yeah, so we have close relationships, that's for sure. Yeah, and also in our group, as I know, some of the groups will have 1 or 2 core designers, and their ideas is going around all these ideas from the designers. But we're not doing this in our group. In our group, we almost design everything everyone. So as you can see, you already know, but someone maybe don't know, we have 10 prototypes before this. And for those prototypes, we iterate each one based on the previous ones and also test out what the features are funny and interesting. But more importantly for the prototypes to us is it is a way for us to find a direction that suits everybody, make everybody comfortable and enjoyable to work on. If you look back now, it seems like some of the prototypes are not related to our Thesis, but I will probably say without any one of this prototype, we will not have a chance to make lime juice. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what is the secret to knowing when it's time to move on to a new idea?
Yeah. One of the reasons is whether we like it. When we say we like it, it's like, is there anybody hates the thing we're gonna make? And the second one also is a more important one is when it's a deadline. When it's approached closer to the deadline, it is easier for us to design.
I see. Good. I'm glad. Okay. Are there any? Yeah. What does the future look like for this game? I'm very curious. Is there? Are there more scenes, or is it just more? Yeah, what is the plan?
Yeah, so currently we have 3. I think our plan is to have 1 more, and also we also want to add more animations to the existing scenes, because some of them in certain areas still feel pretty empty. But other than that, it'll just be a lot of polish and a lot of more iterations, and yeah.
Great. Looking forward to playing it some more at the showcase, even though I've played, I think, almost every other version possible, even some that other people will never see, so I feel privileged. Yes. Thanks so much for coming out. Are there any thank yous that you all want to give, or any shout-outs or anything?
Yeah, shout out to this person called Laura, extremely helpful throughout our process. And thank you to all of the faculties and our friends who have played the game and been very patient. We're pretty annoying in our playtesting process because every week we bring out a different game, and it's very confusing for a lot of people. So thank you for still being our friends and our advisors. And yeah, thank you for watching.
Yeah, see you all on Thursday, maybe. Hello and welcome back. We're a little further away this time. What do you think? All right, so I'm here with Josh, and this is Dogwalker Unleashed. So, what's okay, all right, so this game is clearly about speed, right? So you're walking really fast, but you're walking the whole time. So, how did you land on speed as like the core theme for this?
Yeah, so I made a lot of prototypes for this game, and I played a lot of similar things. Like I love Doom and I love Ultra Kill, and I love that whole genre and like Quake and the way it feels to move around in that space. And I just wanted to make a game that kind of encapsulates the need to move fast and to stay moving fast, you know, and just really feel like a shark almost in a way, like a weird way. But and then you keep on getting faster and moving faster, and it feels really cool. So.
Oh, this just says dog form seems really crazy. It does. So where are the dogs? Yeah, right. This game is a solo effort. I watched you work on it for a long time. Many different versions of this game. You've done the design, the programming, the visuals. That's a lot of dogs to walk. So what would you say is like the most rewarding part of making something like this on your own, though?
Personally, I think it's just the amount of random prototyping you can do. So I think when you work in a very large group of people, it can be like, you know, hard to just want to pivot constantly. But I mean, you remember that I made like 10 different games, right? And that to me was so rewarding because I got to try a lot of different things and figure out exactly what I wanted to do. And even though it took a little while and I landed in somewhere really cool, I think it's worthwhile learning that you can prototype that much and still eventually find some really cool footing.
Yeah, I do remember so many different versions. All these, you know, humble experiments in leash physics as it began, and now there are no leashes. Right. So, what is the biggest change though over the course of the project? Would you say, like, what is the thing that you found? You know.
So if you remember, it started as a resource management game, and you would like mine stuff and upgrade things with those resources, and that wasn't like interesting or fun. So as I moved away from resource management and started doing more action, I found that was, you know, the biggest change, I guess, is like there is no resource management as like a core feature of this game. There's like nothing in here that's like, oh, I have to get more of this gem or find more power cells or anything like that. It's just straight like go and kill everything. So to think that at one point this was like closer to something like No Man's Sky or Fractalis is super, super. That's, I think, the biggest change that there is.
Great. Why did I put this note? How do you handle pooping in this game? I said it's inevitable. Yeah, well,
so
in dog form.
It's a roguelike. So when you die, you start over. And I've been thinking a lot about ways that you can handle that. But right now, it's very much like you start over, and the main thing that you're gaining is experience with the different weapons. Right. In this case, there's a lot of diversification of play. You're forced to use a lot of different kinds of weapons and a lot of different kinds of contexts against a bunch of enemies. They all act differently, so you have to learn how to play differently. And learning how to play fast with each weapon is really interesting, right? It's one thing if you can just survive with them, but I found that it's really good if you just, when you find that little bit of like, oh, this is how this weapon is used, right? And yeah, I think when you die, you start to figure out, you know, oh, I liked that shotgun, but I didn't like that pistol, or I really love the snipers, or, you know, how do I get better with explosive weaponry? And that's how I handle pooping, I think.
It's a good way to do it. Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yeah. Everybody poops.
Yeah, that's my favorite book of mine. So do you, when you're watching people play, do you find that they have do people gravitate towards like particular styles? Like how, like it's about speed, right? But people are going to have to ramp up in different ways. What are some of the ways that people have found to navigate the space?
So that's a really awesome question, because I have watched like maybe hundreds of hours of gameplay footage of this from different people, and everyone finds this new weird way that feels broken. Which is really cool. Some people, like the gameplay that's on the screen now, is just a super, super good sniper with GODWALKER, which is the highest level of God mode. And it's just you're doing so much damage that if you can keep on hitting targets, you're insane, right? And that's just one example. Some of the explosive weapons, like the rapid fire explosive weapons, if you can hit multiple enemies in the same explosion, like that's another really good way to get your meter up. And that's just what I love about it the most, is that every single, not every single time, but most times people will find these weird niche, like new things that I hadn't really thought about, which just makes me really happy when when I give it to them, you know?
Yeah, it's a really great feeling. So I'm also curious kind of about the look of the game, because it changed a lot over the course of its development. Like, how did this current vibe happen? Like, where did that come from?
So if you remember in the thesis process, I had that point where I was like, what am I actually doing? Right? Where I spent like 2 or 3 weeks just playing a lot of games. And this is the result of me kind of actualizing this idea that this is a very, very short love letter to games like Quake that I love, and the original Doom, and that whole genre of like this pixel art that doesn't really feel like pixel art, that is in 3D. And it's very, very similar to Quake in the way that I do it, but in the way that it is here, it's a lot cleaner, I think, more cut. And it's something I can produce on my own, because it was at one point cell shaded and flat shaded, and that was, it just didn't feel like it was fitting. It doesn't look like the game that it is when it's that way. And I think this suits it a lot more than something else.
Yeah, there's something about the low resolution textures and the speed that kind of like it goes really well together, because things are moving so quickly past you that it feels more just like the whole thing is one big texture that's like constantly shifting around you. It's really interesting. Gosh, let's see. Well, I mean, it's not like, what are your future plans for this monstrosity? There's a lot going on already, right? So
yeah, I mean, right now I would like to polish it up, finish it out, bring it to Showcase, and see where it goes. You know, I have a really awesome community. Shout out to the Discord server. Thank you guys for playing and giving me feedback and being insane at my game. You guys rock. Yeah, I'd like to finish it out. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to test, and a lot of stuff I'd like to mess with, and I'd love to see where it goes.
Yeah, me too. All right, thanks so much. Yeah, any final like thanks or shout outs that you want to give before we wrap up here?
Shout out to all the professors who helped me along the process, and shout out to my mom and dad and family who are watching, and shout out to everyone behind the camera running this event, and yeah, anyone else, you know, if you've worked on this game or play tested it or given me feedback, I really appreciate it. Y'all are amazing, and yeah, thank you so much, guys.
See ya.
All right. Well, that looked amazing. And we are here with Team HyperStars. Do you have a team name or just named after the game?
Yeah, I think we're just named after the game.
Okay, excellent. So first of all, congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
You're all basically almost done. You have to get through Thursday for the showcase. Come to the showcase, everybody. How does it feel?
Pretty exciting. I like. There's so much people that are like excited to try our game online, and like we're excited to have people have their hands on it and just like enjoy like having PvP experience. So.
Yeah. The relief. 4 years, you're done. You're going to be free men and women.
Yeah.
Feels like a dream.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about the game a little bit. How about we do that? So first of all, it's a fighting game. Why? Like what attracted you to that genre? Why did you all decide to make a fighting game?
Yeah, I think like when we first like pitched the project or like started thinking about it over the summer, we really wanted to create an experience like that we want to enjoy making while like playing and making at the same time. That like we want to go to every playtest with like a lot of fun, a lot of like eyes on the project, and I feel like the best way to do that is like through a fighting game. And it's we rarely kind of see fighting games get made around our circle.
Yeah,
so
it's
nice
in the Capstone. It's a little rare.
Yeah. So we wanted to take on that challenge to like do something unique and excel in kind of our individual skill sets and to do something fun.
Let's talk about individual skill sets just real fast. Can we do a big review? It's a big team. Can we do a review of what people's responsibilities were? Just
yeah,
starting
sure.
and go down? Yeah.
I'll start. I did the combat design and the character art.
I did design, playtesting, and management.
My name is Peter. I did the UI UX art and design, as well as some graphic design as well.
My name is Monroe. I did narrative and 2D animation.
Yeah, I'm Wesley. I did physics and UI programming and also some narrative design.
I'm Steve. I did technical design and sound design as well.
I'm Jade. I was one of the programmers.
Awesome. All right. Well, so you decided to take on a fighting game because I think that's really interesting that you wanted something that was fun to play test while you were building it. But we just saw it. Like, it's not just a generic fighting game. You have a kind of interesting take on the genre. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah. One of the unique things that we're trying to do is like twisting the health bar system to be a tug of war meter. Because we wanted to facilitate this like constant back and forth of hype combos between like both players, and really wanted to test that design and push it and see where we can take it by doing something that's like familiar but also like fresh and unique. So.
Fighting games can be pretty alienating. Did you all think a little bit about that when you were designing the game, building it?
Yeah. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, 100%. Coming from someone who was mostly a PC gamer all my life. Generally the fighting game genre usually comes from a background of like console games and things like that. And honestly, it was a bit jarring to start on fighting games, but at the same time, I felt like I could also do a fresh take on the fighting game genre. And we kind of did that in this HyperStars game where we really emphasize spacing and movement to the point that we even do not have a block. And
wait, say that again one more time.
Yeah, we do not have a block in our fighting game.
You had to bring it up.
Interesting.
And
all right, keep going.
Yeah, basically what we feel is that when you have a block, you need grab. And when you have grab in the game, that means that you, at a high level, you have to go in for RPS, close in, grab, grab, block, mix-ups.
It just adds a level of complexity. That's.
Yeah, in a way that we kind of don't want to go the traditional route, but more footsies.
Yeah. Well, I played it and it's a lot of fun. But how has the reception been for the game so far? Now that it's basically about to be shown to the general public at the showcase, but how have the playtesters been responding to it?
Yeah, I mean, week by week, we would conduct playtests, and in our external playtests, a lot of people find it really fun. Of course, they're shocked with the twists that we made for the game, like the tug of war meter, no block, which some fighting game players kind of find a little jarring to get into. But what's really kind of promising for us is that the game feels good. and things are clear whenever they play the game. And that's one of the goals that we wanted to really emphasize during our production, that like combat in this game should be clear, be understood. Even if you're a beginner, you hop onto it, you can kind of get how to do combos, you can kind of see wall bounce combos happening, and you can get into it and still have fun without having that like high like skill entry.
Talk about that clarity. Obviously, the game is very visually impressive. So talk about the visual development of the game and maybe how that influenced some part of the combat design, how it maybe went the other direction. Like, for instance, these characters that we're looking at on screen, did you choose what they looked like first and then go to their moveset, or did you kind of have an idea for a way a character would behave and then move towards the visual design? How did that process work?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like character design, a lot of it went into a balance of like the visuals. I would like come up with sketches, and Monroe would like help flesh out like the narrative, and that would help us like think about the moves that we have in the game. And then on top of that, when we're testing the combat, we want it to be clear in terms of the feedback. So Steve as well worked on creating like VFX, and Monroe for like the animations to make them really like pop, and make sure that like each attack has a consistent feedback throughout the gameplay.
What was the hardest part of that process? Was there like an anecdote you can share with us of like a part where that process broke down a little bit, and how did you find your way through it to, you know, the thing that you have now?
Does anyone have any difficult moments?
It was no problems.
I think just like the initial prototype for this game looks a lot different than it actually turned out. So making that decision, it was kind of a bold move, kind of after a month of developing this game, that we found that it wasn't really going in a direction that we were behind. And so I think just like having the confidence to be able to start from scratch again and like kind of go to our roots with fighting games, that was kind of like a big turning point in development. I think ever since then, ever since we kind of had a more clear vision of what the game should look like and what the mechanics should be, it was like able to iterate a lot easier after that. Yeah.
All right. In the little time we have left, what's next for the project? Is the showcase the final exhibition, or do you think this project goes forward?
6 more characters.
6 more characters.
All right, I will definitely hold you all to that. If there are not 8 characters in this game, I'm going to have you back on this show next year.
Yeah, pull us back.
Capstone. 9 characters. All right, great. Keep it upping the ante. All right, well, thank you all.
Yeah, 1 out of 10. We'll put that up.
Y'all done a great job. Congratulations to all of you. You should be proud of all the work that you've done.
Thank you so much.
And everyone should come out and play HyperStars at the showcase. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You call Guildcorp. Tell them that your little plan went to waste. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear it.
Well, don't you worry. I will get my gun and my suit.
You don't have to keep fighting anymore. Just accept that your family is gone. There's nothing you can do about it.
Take a look around, brat. There's no going back now.
You can choose to walk away like I did.
You don't get it. You're so dense, I swear. I don't have a choice. It's been a pleasure, Gravitas. But don't worry. I'll make sure to send your regards to the rest of the Wavegun team in hell.
All right. right. Well, that was very exciting and very gory. That was great. Yeah. Congratulations to everybody. I hope you all are feeling great about the project and what you've gotten done. Anybody relieved? Anyone glad it's finally over? You're all graduating, right? Everybody here is free now.
It's been a big journey, but we're excited.
Yeah, so Ember Point is, in case for people who don't know this kind of genre, it's kind of a melee combat game with range combat, right? Like, it's a little bit of an action-adventure game. Talk a little bit about why you decided on that kind of a genre to build for your capstone. Like, what attracted you to the kind of challenges of that design?
Well, initially we started out wanting to make this project a project that's more akin to Japanese stylish action games. I had written down a design document that had a brief synopsis, the combat pillars, games that are inspired by Ninja Gaiden. That's something that we looked at, and I had pitched it to Carson. And Carson brought the team over. We all collaborated, and as we started to build on the narrative, we realized that the main character Gravitas seemed a little bit helpless. Like, we wanted to make him feel a little more vulnerable fighting against a bunch of enemies. So we explored a more grounded and cinematic approach. And this is something that's completely new for me personally. And it was amazing just to go through the journey with this incredible team. And it was just fantastic. So yeah, that's why we chose it. That's what we wanted to go for.
Awesome. Well, before we keep going, let's talk a little bit about the roles. If y'all could say who you are and what your role was on the team, just so it helps the discussion going forward. Why don't we start here?
Okay, sure. I'm Edith. I'm the 2D 3D artist, one of the level designers. Yeah, I also do art direction.
Yep. I'm Bader. I'm the combat and gameplay programming lead.
I'm Carson. I'm the lead producer.
I'm Beck, one of the concept artists, and help with level layouts and a little bit of narrative as well.
I'm Donovan. I did a lot of the audio design and has also helped with some of the combat design as well.
I'm Juliana. I was a level programmer, mocap technician, and I think visual design.
And I'm Erna, and I was the lead narrative designer.
Wow, mocap. All right, we'll come back to that. Yeah, I wonder if that was an interesting discussion of the process, right? Like, you had an idea for a certain type of game, and then you kind of dove into doing the narrative. Could y'all talk a little bit about the process of developing the world and these characters? I mean, a lot of this that, the trailer focuses a lot on this central character of Gravitas. I think we kind of hear the little robot companion that he has, right? Talk about how you develop this world and the ideas around it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. Well, we decided, first and foremost, this is a combat-heavy game, so any of the narrative that we wanted to add was going to be, centered around the combat and how we can direct players towards it. So when we first started the process, started thinking about, okay, how do we represent environmental storytelling, and how do we, make this character, appealing to players as they're, focusing heavily on the mechanics rather than having something that's narrative heavy. Because at the end of the day, we didn't want players to stop the experience that they found more fun, which is the heavy combat. So when I started thinking of the world, I was thinking, okay, how do we formulate it around, these creepy, gory, scary-looking enemies, and how do we make the world fit that? And, it was definitely a longer process than we anticipated, and, we did only, decide to put it in once we finished all the combat, but once we did, it all came together very beautifully, and I'm really happy with how it turned out.
How did you all manage to make that come together beautifully? That's hard with a team where there's lots of different people, lots of different areas that have to be brought together on a game like this. What was the process that worked so well for you?
Yeah, we had a really kind of deep communication with this, starting this last semester off with a really detailed Jira and making sure we're just really on top of it. I think what really helped us is we had really defined roles. Everyone was a lead in something or really contributed to their own little pocket, so everyone had something that was kind of their baby. So it kind of helped the team be we want everyone's thing in as best as possible, and it really just came down to getting it all done, even if it was behind the wire. I mean, 4 weeks ago, we had no voice acting at all, and we have a completely voice acted game right now. That's a great example. Thanks to Donovan and Erna. It's just great work and really quick work too.
Excellent. Yeah, let's talk about some of the I would say the things that you might not think about go into making of a game like this. So things like mocap. Like what was the discussion where you're like, yeah, definitely on this undergrad capstone project we're going to have a mocap. We're going to do some mocap moves, right? That's fine. Then we'll do some voice acting. Obviously, of course, we're going to have voice acting. So like, how were those decisions made, and what was the process of getting that stuff into the game?
So the mocap, I actually, I started out by taking a class at Tisch, an IDM class that was a motion capture class, and I realized that I actually really, really enjoyed doing it. And I came to Carson, I came to Bader, and I asked them, I said, I have this like special skill. Is this okay if I maybe just try something here? In-game cinematics was something that we had never tried before. I don't think that it was definitely not in the scope in the beginning, and it was something that we were like, okay, maybe we can do this. Like, let's try it. And they let us try it. We had our wonderful motion capture actor here, Donovan.
It was awesome.
You were Gravitas?
Is that
right?
Wow. No, not Gravitas. I was one of the zombies.
He was the enemies. And we had our wonderful voice actor, Cole. He was playing Gravitas, and it's funny, he voices Nico. We just had an amazing day, and it was just absolutely so fun, and it was really, really incredible how we were able to pull that off.
Yeah. To touch on that, it's like we definitely came looking at this as a mini level like production as best we could for like what would seem to be like a mock AAA, and really just like worked as hard and diligently as we could of using like NYU's resources. Cole's an actor friend of mine, so it was easy to be like, well, you're going to voice act, and then who do you got with you? And we found our next voice actor that way.
So let's talk a little bit about sound then, because I think actually like sound is an underappreciated and extremely important part of these types of games. So Donovan, you want to talk a little bit about doing the sound design for the game?
it was definitely awesome being able to work on a project of this scale. Like, I've never even gotten to like touch Unreal before this project, and just being told to like, okay, we need all this sound for this game. It was just like, okay, I got to get everything pretty much in. Like, it was definitely a fun experience to take a lot of Bader's work from combat design and sort of implement gruesome sounds into it and make everything seem more visceral and bloody. And I definitely think the most fun I had was working on the boss and also getting all the voice acting in. We literally had to like snatch a room last minute downstairs and like record all the voice acting within like an hour. And right when we finished, we got pretty much kicked out. It was fun. It was fun. I had a great time.
All right, because we are running out of time, let's talk very quickly about the boss, because we see it at the end of the trailer. Do you want to talk a little bit about designing a boss, which is very different for different types of games?
Well, designing a boss is really challenging because you really want to offer players it has to be a good test of skill, and it has to be a really good conclusion to the game. So we went through so many iterations. Initially, it was an enemy that kind of like enforced you to play in a very specific way, but we had realized that we needed to offer player more choices, and you can see now that players can use their gun, they can approach the enemy in every way that they can strategize, they can think of the battle space, thinking of the battle space in relation to the behavior of the boss as well is one thing that we considered. It was really interesting. It was also very eye-opening. I've never designed a boss before, so it was just really, it was a badass process, and we all had to coordinate together. This team, their feedback, their input, it was absolutely phenomenal, and I've learned a lot from them as well.
All right, well, congratulations to all of you, and I can't wait to play the final version at the showcase, but you should all be very proud. So I'll give yourself a round of applause, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that was great. I'm here with Team Stellarune. Welcome, everyone.
What's up? Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you.
Before we start, let's talk a little bit about roles. Can you all introduce yourselves and what you did on the game?
Yeah, I'm Reef. I'm the art director and technical artist.
I'm Xiao. I'm the lead programmer.
I'm May. I'm the action designer and 3D modeler.
And I'm Eric. I'm the actions and enemy programmer.
And we're missing a few people, right? How big is the team altogether?
Altogether, it was 9 people. A lot of them couldn't make it today, but we're here to hold the fort.
That's fair enough. Yeah, thank you all for making room in your busy schedules. That trailer was great, but I do think it might behoove us a little bit to explain how the game works. So we see dice, we see a grid, we see things moving around. Talk a little bit about how Stellarune actually works.
Yeah, so the trailer has a lot going on. I think the main thing that we want to be looking at and we put a lot of attention to is the grid-based combat. It's a 4x8 grid, and the player kind of stays on the left side. They kind of move and dodge abilities coming in from the enemies, which are on the right side, and then they cast abilities using their dice at the top. The kind of primary thing that they're using the dice for is that each side of the dice represents a spell, and you press the button associated with that dice to cast a spell and roll the dice to a different one. So you'll be doing a lot of customizing of the dice to kind of have your own player expression. And then you will be increasing and decreasing the probability of rolling certain actions to fit your own playstyle.
Yeah, I played a little bit of it, and it has a very interesting kind of flavor, right? This kind of little bit between a real-time Magicka-like kind of spell casting, your whiz, that sort of thing. But then also this stepwise movement gives it the flavor of almost a turn-based game. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what y'all's inspirations were for the game. What are the games you're drawing on, and how did they lead you to this design?
Yeah, the first one was Mega Man Battle Network, which was a game that actually got re-released pretty recently. They kind of I think their game was a 3x6 grid, and it was much slower paced. And then we also played One Step from Eden, which was a kind of game that was released last year, and they have a much more faster pace. So we wanted to kind of find this kind of unique strategic middle ground where we were not really too fast to the point that you can't see your actions, but we also wanted to give a lot of emphasis on how you can kind of customize your own player expression. And so that's kind of how we ended up with this slight middle ground between these two games that we really like, yeah.
Interesting. So why dice? What attracted you to dice as a kind of central mechanic for the game?
So it all started in the prototype phase. Okay. So we started as a card game, and then we tried all the different combinations between card and dice, and then we decided to stick with the dice.
I think the thing that appealed to us was that dice has no memory, and cards do. And so with no memory, we have the kind of agency for the player to have a little bit of unpredictability and a little bit less planning, but just enough that they understand what is it. Because they're the ones making the active choice, right, to put what's on the dice. And I think that's what was really appealing. You get this kind of choice of what your capacity is, but you don't really have this idea on what you're going to get at any given moment. And that was what was interesting to us. The no memory, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there is that kind of flavor that we're all so used to card games, but dice really do have this different way of dealing with randomness. How is that play tested? I mean, what was your process of designing this game? How did you approach explaining this kind of a system to players that might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, our first approach was not to tell them anything and just kind of figure it out. We on the battle screen you have UIO, so those are the only things that the player knows. And WASD just kind of is a natural, a familiar rather control scheme, and UIOP is something that you just is on the screen. So we just kind of let them try to understand by not telling them and see how little onboarding we needed to give them. And it actually came very naturally to a lot of people. The dice customization, once they kind of saw the bench, saw the kind of customization screen, they were like, "Oh, okay, I get it. I'm understanding what I need to do here." And then when they go into battle, it's like, "Oh, those are my dice." And that's when we kind of knew they got it. So it was with a little bit of onboarding. Sometimes we just had to introduce them to dice customization screen, which is they're slightly far apart because they're the two sides of our game. And so, but I suppose the connection was much easier once they saw their dice in battle.
So making games is really hard, as you are all now probably very aware of. And making games with people is even harder. So can you talk a little bit about the process of, this is a year-long project, both semesters. Can you talk about the process not of developing the game, but of kind of working as a team, finding the ways that people worked well together? What was maybe an instance where like there was a breakdown in that process and you got back on track? Like, talk about the experience of building this game.
Yeah, the experience was actually really hard. Like 95% of our issues came from miscommunications, misunderstandings, and so I'm not gonna say like, oh yeah, just be clear, or just because that's like kind of just the easy answer. But like realistically, it was a matter of like, if we don't know what an answer is, then we're not gonna waste time arguing about it, because that's what, or discussing it, whatever it might be. It was like, can we figure out the solution in a tangible way by putting it into the game and seeing if it's wrong. If it's not my way, it's got to be your way. And kind of like understanding that we're all on the same team and we're all just kind of like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter like what we're vouching for. We're trying to, at the end of the day, we're all on the same page if we want to make a good game. So like as long as we kind of upheld that mindset, all kind of like worked out, and just putting it in the game always helps to find an answer.
Yeah, just build it. Yeah, please.
And we also have a very good project manager who's not here today, Kirby. Like, she helped a lot. Like, a good management is really helpful on schedule and progress.
What? So the game is very successful, right? It's really fun. It looks very polished, but there's a lot of hard conversations that happen even making any game, even a very successful game. What for you all was the hardest part of this process?
Communication. Like definitely communication.
Do you have a particular, like, what was the darkest moment that you want to share?
I think it was well, one, the title, but two, the times in which like our control scheme, whether or not it was UIOP or pressing space to run through spell by spell. And that was a long conversation, and that's where we kind of like picked up the philosophy of like, let's just put it in game and figure it out after that. And so because we were like, okay, if we try this, we realized if we put it in, it doesn't work, then it has to be the other way, and that's an instance in which that happens, and we found that to be very helpful. So communication, like we could, because games is such an abstract thing, and game mechanics is such an abstract thing, you could talk about it and discuss till the cows go home. So just put it in and see what happens.
And adding on to that, I think one of the biggest issues was also like, we have a different idea of how this thing should be designed in our head, and it's hard to communicate that throughout the team. So it's like more calls and more time spent together to really like show how we want something to be done or something to look in the end result. Also like went a long way to kind of make the communication better and make the kind of results like more uniform across like all our works and stuff.
And then there were some instances where we had like a spam problem, and we were trying to introduce mechanics to stop the spam problem. But I think, Charles, it was you who said like adding more mechanics made it more messy. And so in the end, we like had a mana bar system and all these other limiters. But the true solution was just like getting rid of all that.
Elegance.
Yeah. Well, it turned out great. Congratulations to all of you, and you should be very proud. And everyone should come play it at the showcase on Thursday. So thank you all. We're next up, we're going to have the last sort of group of Thesis games, so stick around for that.
I am a little creature. I was born in the poison swamp. there is something big and hollow that takes care of me, but I have never heard it speak. We know what moss, and dirt, and flesh taste like. I have whispered songs that make it cry. It has shown me beautiful, tiny graves. I know that it misses me already, and I know what I was put here to do. But I will not be alive much longer. I hope there is time for one last trip to the shore. Then it will be time to say goodbye.
Hello, I'm here with the Goodbye Monster team. Do you guys have an official name for yourselves?
No, we've always just been Monster Team.
Yeah, Monster Team. Wow, that trailer is so full of vibes. Yeah, really sad vibes. I think the first time I watched it, I was like, ugh, like I don't know what I was feeling. But then at the end, you see what the game looks like, which is what's playing on the screen now. I've been trying to describe what this game is to a few people who I'm like, no, you really have to come to the showcase, play this game. It's kind of, you know, somewhere between like a HTML5 net art experiment and playing Neopets, and also like an experimental Twine game all at the same time. People are like, I cannot picture that in my head at all. But you can, unfortunately, if you're watching the stream, you can see it on the screen. How are you guys describing this game? Like, what's your?
So we've started describing it as a text-based adventure game where you travel around an alien sort of world. It has kind of like isolating vibes, kind of nostalgic because of like the old web kind of feel. And you're traveling with this creature until they reach their inevitable end, that the creature's going to die, and that's kind of the time that you have to spend with them exploring things.
Right, so spoilers, if you play this game and you get attached to this little creature like the reborn horror on the screen here, you can interact with it in a bunch of pet-like ways. But like, were you guys inspired by like the Tamagotchi? Because that I think of as like the virtual pet creature who is definitely going to die. Yeah, I see you guys.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think we took a lot of different creature collector and pet games as inspirations for this. Tamagotchi for sure. Neopets was probably like the first one that we thought of, although it didn't end up necessarily resembling Neopets all that much. But even looking at like more less pet gamey stuff like Pokemon, yeah, and kind of just like really trying to think about that genre and like what can we do narratively with it, thinking about death.
And let's talk about the visuals of this game as well, right? Because that's the striking thing for me when playing this game is that, yeah, a lot of it is conveyed through text, but it's always surrounded by this kind of rich feeling of the combination of these titles and objects that you're finding floating there, but also the top and the bottom of the screen always have these visuals. Can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at that juxtaposition of image and text?
So I feel like what's interesting is that the color palette was decided on very early on, even before I was a part of this team. But the composition of every screen has been in talks for like over this whole thesis time. I feel like we've only set it decided on it really, really late, just like a month ago or something. And mostly our visuals are definitely there for the vibes, for the aesthetic, to convey the feeling of our world rather than showing any kind of narrative. And yeah, so I feel like it's mostly of a vibes thing for sure.
Yeah, how do you guys think about this world? It sort of feels to me like a dying world, or ruined or abandoned, and kind of like living in the decay that remains. Like what does that signify to you? Like what were you trying to go for there?
We were inspired early on by Princess Mononoke and sort of the vibes that Studio Ghibli brings to their work, where there are problems in nature, there's something going wrong, but there's also this sort of underlying optimism. So when you watch like Nausicaa, for example, it's clear that something really terrible has happened and things aren't always sort of on the upbeat, but there's kind of perseverance that you can experience watching it. And so we took kind of inspiration from that. We talked about having sort of a post-apocalyptic springtime that, you know, just because things are sad or, you know, these things are going to end doesn't necessarily make them any less valuable. And then Rook worked a lot on sort of like the backstory and the things that sort of funneled into that.
One of the things that I explored was like the world didn't end in one big apocalyptic event. It like ended in separate ways, kind of in cascading timings that all had different effects and stuff.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting contrast of trying to care for a creature and sort of having that attachment, and then finding out or realizing or knowing even before you play that life is going to end. But then, like you're saying, also kind of a sense of hope or meaning coming out of that. It's so hard to predict how players are going to respond to something like that. I'm curious, like, at what you guys have been seeing in terms of play testing. Like, are people getting the vibe that you're going for? Are there different sorts of players who like respond positively or negatively to this like sort of carefully attuned narrative aesthetic?
I think everyone gets the vibe, but people either don't care at all about their creature or care a lot.
Interesting. And if they don't care about the creature, are they sort of like more focused on exploring the world? Right. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten people who are like very sort of indifferent to the creatures, and I think somebody who is our playtester might be watching right now, and she called me a monster for making a game where your pets can die. So she
was like, "Goodbye, monster."
And like there's like this huge swing where we haven't seen a lot of playtesters who fall in that middle ground where they're sort of, oh, I cared about it a little bit, but not enough to shed a tear. It's sort of they're all in or they're all out.
Interesting. Would you ever think, you know, as you sort of continue with this project, like recognizing that as like two different ways of approaching the game, like, and treating those players differently? I'm just sort of curious now. I'm sort of like spinning out like what that sort of says something interesting about the personality or the way that the player is responding to your, like, emotionally to it, right?
Yeah, I think it's such a big like complicated feeling to deal with death, even just sort of generally, that I am interested in how players are going to fit into that world. We took a lot of care with the wording of a lot of the text, that we're not telling the player how they're feeling when they explore the world. It's all sort of distant, so that you can sort of slide in there and feel how you're going to feel about what happens. And that's like the important takeaway is kind of the mirror more than making a statement of our own about it.
Right. That makes good sense. So people can play it right now at goodbye.monster, right? Is that
yes, it's the actual URL, which is kind of a strange one, but you can put .monster into your
goodbye.monster,
and you can go right there.
Nice. And what do you see coming next for this project?
We're really interested in continuing to expand out sort of the world and have more things to do with your creatures, have more systems to interact with. I think Matt was just getting started on weather, which might make an appearance.
Nice.
And we're looking to keep it a free web game, so that it's kind of a project that lives on the internet. People can come to play for a little bit of time and leave it behind, but never really asking for any sort of like subscription or putting it on the App Store or anything.
Great. Any last shout outs? We have another like 15 seconds left. Anybody you want to say hi to?
I think my family's watching.
Yeah, mine as well.
Hi, Nick's family.
Yeah,
hey,
hi,
Anya.
family.
Hey, Anya. Hey, Dima.
All right, thanks so much to the Goodbye Monster team. You can check it out, play it right now at goodbye.monster, or come by and play it on Thursday at the showcase.
Trailer, take one.
Guess who?
Hey, you ever try normal bad sex?
Well, not on purpose.
No. I mean the video game.
Oh, that. Yeah. I'll cut that out.
It's like a playable podcast about uncomfortable sexual experiences, accompanied by mini games.
All of the audio is completely real people talking about their real experiences.
The three of us still got brunch after, like nothing was wrong.
Yeah, you're our guest. Welcome to the threesome. On your fucking birthday.
On my fucking birthday.
Join us on a journey through the hilarious and cringeworthy stories of normal bad sex.
Therapy is a very powerful thing. What's more powerful is your best friend dragging your ex in a video game for their thesis.
Bam! Done.
Hello, welcome back. I'm here with the normal bad sex team, Swati, Nisha, and Sophie. Thanks for being here, you guys. Yeah, so I think the gist hopefully came across to everybody watching at home for what normal bad sex is. You guys are describing it as an interactive podcast.
Yep.
And it's, I think the core of it is an interview, and eventually a series of interviews, right? And where the interviewer as who you see as a clown here on the screen, it's played by Nisha. And you interviewed, how many interviews have you collected total for this project so far?
We have 3 recorded interviews, and we have 1 interview that we're featuring in the current demo. It was originally 40 minutes, and we edited down to 15, and we're still looking for more submissions. We'll talk about that later, but yeah.
Nice, right? And so the fascinating thing here is, and this is something that I don't feel like I've seen done very much at all in games. It's kind of fusing like a documentary style, like observation, like real life storytelling that I associate with, like you were saying, podcasts, right? But also like oral histories or storytelling series like The Moth, or even like documentary book interviews, like Studs Terkel kind of examinations of life, right? But you guys have paired it with mini games, and that's what I think is sort of like very exciting and new. Like different way of engaging someone's attention and kind of feeling like you're right there in the middle of the mix. But let's talk about the content too, right? Because that's the other side of it that is a little bit daring, and like we've talked about before, sometimes difficult to approach players with, right? So I think of when I look at the vibes that you guys have going on here, it feels really like you're trying to make the topic of sex, especially difficult bad sex, approachable. How do you arrive at this point where it's like it's cute, it's fun and playful? How did playtesters react? How did you guys get to that style?
One of the things that we're interested in exploring is this gray area of sexual psychology, where culturally a lot of the vocabulary and kind of concepts that we have for negative sexual experience are kind of stemming from trauma and things that are really life-changing, but there's a lot of the fabric of our everyday intimate lives, our experiences, that are kind of like disrespectful, lacking compassion, strange, unusual, but not fitting neatly into a box. They're kind of hard to place, so we wanted to explore this thing that we felt was quite common, but maybe there wasn't a lot of good vocabulary to help people process it, and not a lot of stories, especially in the gaming space, to help people see themselves. For the tone, we wanted it to feel like very approachable. These are the kind of stories that most often you share late at night with a friend, or maybe like having drinks, where you might be laughing through it, but also acknowledging that something maybe not very spectacular happened. So we wanted it to be a very shifting tone that can be grounded, but also very silly and jokey, but quite serious at times. The art direction is definitely meant to make it feel like these topics don't have to be life or death. We can talk about this in a way that is like normalized and casual. And friendly. The audio definitely pulls no punches. It's very direct, but all of the visuals are very abstracted from the literal events happening.
Right, interesting, and because there is a sense of people like working through their feelings, which are not good feelings. Let's be clear, right? So it's not in this realm of like, oh, let's talk about a lovely positive sexual experience. And it's also, like you said, it's not dealing with the important, but certainly not for entertainment stories
they're
of
like
sexual assault.
complex and nuanced. And it was also important to us that our speaker feels like that the experiences in the past, it's something that they've already processed, so that the listener also feels safe kind of learning about this experience through them.
Right, makes a lot of sense. And so this, who do you guys see as the audience that you're trying to reach with this?
I mean, we've talked about this at different times of development, and it has kind of evolved, if you will. I think originally we kind of wanted the people that engage with psychosexual games to kind of play it, and also people that listen to podcasts, obviously, was a huge market for who we wanted to play this game, because the game itself is very simple, and anybody could play it. So it's very beginner friendly, so that was our target. But we've also talked about, like, you know, taking it to museums and things like that, because it is a documentation of someone's real story. That's mainly what we've discussed in terms of a target audience. Yeah.
Well, I think it's so interesting that you maybe potentially tapped a vein, right? There's so many stories out there like this. Like, it would be like easy to gather and curate and edit down a lot of them. My sense is that the thing that was a lot of work for you guys was doing all the interactive components of it and smoothing that out. And so for those people who haven't done game development, like, that's the big lift, right? What do you see in the future? Like, if people are like, I've got a story, how would you go about
We actually have a forum that's going to be live at Showcase where people can submit their own stories. One thing that we've definitely noticed through playtesting is people playing this game, and even if they can't relate to the literal events, being able to relate to the feelings and thinking, oh, wait a second, I have a version of this experience that I kind of have trouble processing, or that's been, complicated for me. Right. So yeah, we are actively recruiting stories. We have a link. I believe it is bit.ly/normalbadstories.
Nice. And so that's kind of part of the experience, is being like, oh, I have something I want to get off of my chest, right? And do you see this expanding beyond the 3 that you have? Would you want to be a bigger project? And and how would you approach that as like a production challenge too?
In the future, we're thinking we would take on more stories, like the forum that Nusha mentioned earlier. If other people feel like they have stories that they want to share that would fit this kind of style, we'd be open to working on a project that's similar like that, because we do want to expand this into more than just this one story, into a whole series of stories.
In particular, we're also thinking that we could approach possibly podcasting studios to go beyond this particular topic and just make playable podcasts and playable interviews its own kind of burgeoning genre.
Nice. How fast do you guys think, now that you've done it and you're like, okay, we got to come up with a little interactive to illustrate this section of the podcast? How rapidly?
We have, I think, much more rapidly than the first time around, because we were kind of, doing something new, trying to make a nonfiction video game. We didn't have that many established references to look at, but I think now that we've done it once, we understand what the strengths of this kind of thing are, what goes well, what's difficult, and I don't know. We made this in 3.5 months, and that was with all of the first-time bumps. So next time, quicker than that.
Nice, excellent. I'm trying to think. Anything else that you guys want to add about future plans, or who you hoping will see this game at Showcase? What's on your minds?
I think special shout out to Ava Maldonado for editing our trailer.
Yeah.
Because it helped us out a lot. It took a pressure off of us, and it's also a phenomenal trailer,
So thank you to Chenza Deladonna for sharing her story. We would not have any of this game without you, and you're an invaluable member of our team, so thank you.
All right, thanks so much, you guys, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone at Showcase. Come by and play this game, hear about this slightly traumatic but mostly super cringy birthday sex experience, and play through it. Thanks very much, team. hello and goodbye. This is our last game of the show. Thank you for watching all the way through. I'm here with Hao and Joey, the developers of Some Goodbyes We Made, which is a collection of games, right? You'll see a lot of them go by on the screen as we're talking. But I think where I want to start is talking about the process. Like, how did you guys get to this point? Tell us where these games came from and how they assembled together into the collection.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rocky road to get here. So basically we started with the idea of sort of almost like an Animal Crossing-y kind of game where, like a big endless game, and the idea was you could end it at any point. So it's supposed to be a game about goodbyes where you enter knowing you have to let go of it. And basically, over the year, we struggled a lot with like a big game. And while we were struggling, we were taking Prototype Studio with Laura, who's here earlier, where you make a game a week, and having a lot of fun with that. And actually, Laura was the first one to suggest switching to, like, basically, like, if you consider just making a micro game collection. And so we held to the idea of goodbyes and then switched to doing a micro game collection.
And a lot of these micro games, how many are there, like 10 in all or something? A lot of them were developed before you came up with the idea. Did it just sort of happen to be that so many of them fit with this theme of goodbyes, or did you have to like squeeze any of them into that frame or adjust them? It's when you play through this collection, you're like, oh, it really seems like all deliberately put together. Like, oh, somebody must have thought, like, I want to make a game about goodbyes, and then I'm going to make these 10 little like precious gems to slot in there. But it's sort of like a bunch of them pre-existed that notion, right? So I'm curious. Did you feel like did organically this theme arise from your work? Did you kind of adjust some of them to get to make them work with the theme, or how did it happen?
I think it's like 50-50. I think part of the reason it's just a coincidence, and we care about goodbye. So when we make games, we just put that concept into our games. And another interesting thing is, I think we kind of try to squeeze them into this collection, and we just open our game list and try to use the perspective of goodbye to view every games and find them work in some ways. So we just put them into the collection. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd love to try and maybe describe some of these games, because I think, like the game that's on screen right now, right? It's a game within a game. So tell us about how that one works, because I think I would love to get the folks watching at home some idea of like what the mechanics are in some of these.
So that one, the game within a game, it opens and you're playing with a child, and you're playing a game of whoever talks first loses. And so, it's basically just like a yes/no kind of answer question, and it sort of forces you to keep talking, even though it's a game of talking. And then as you play, you realize that this kid basically invented the game because they lost someone left, and they invented this game to kind of create a play space that made that loss meaningful, where they're still playing with this person rather than just losing.
There's sort of an ongoing game with someone that they can't see anymore, and they feel like, okay, that the game will just last forever. Right. So that's just one example of all of these like little poignant things, like the game with waving, where every time you move your arm, the person who's like gradually seeing the distance moves their arm, or the game where the only button just says wake up. And as soon as you click wake up, the game is over, and like the images that are going by vanish. So like all of these like little conceits that sort of poetically express themselves. Do you guys have favorites? Like what's your top of the 10? If I know it's hard to pick. They're all like you're like your 10 children. Yeah.
That is a hard question. I might pick the Billy Banana game where you type go banana. It was the first game I made for Prototype Studio, which was just a really great class. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I just have like warm feelings for it.
And in
for
that
reason.
game, you're sort of like rushing faster and faster across an ocean. The faster you type "go go banana."
Yeah, exactly.
And eventually, it does end. And that's the one that sort of like I feel like has a slightly more abstract connection to the idea of goodbye, but it still sort of works. Like you can sort of put it together in your head and be like, oh, I kind of understand. How about you, Hal?
Yeah, I think my favorite keeps changing every day. But right now, my favorite is the airplane game, where you are on a plane and you can interact with the memory outside the window, and the airplane start to move, and everything just vanish. Yeah. And I think my reason is that's the first game I made in the Game Center. And it's like a goodbye to my old life and a hello to Game Center. And using it as a goodbye to the Game Center, it's kind of like a meaningful thing to me.
Nice. That's really poignant for you, both of you. It's like a very early game that you made, which is now your favorite. And that didn't maybe do that. So you were saying that yours changes a lot, but it sort of has become. Is yours the Go Go has been like consistently your favorite?
No, it changes a lot.
It changes
I
too,
like all these games. So
yeah. No, I think they're incredibly charming. I was just saying right before we started the broadcast that my 3-year-old just played a bunch of these, and like she kind of like got a bunch of them immediately. And so I think that's the nice thing about something that's so based in vibes, like communicates really simply, but then you get the impression from it interactively too. Let's describe one more. Tell us how the game with the frog at the microphone works, because you've probably seen that one going by if you're watching, and I think that's a really interesting one to describe too.
So that game is just you play as a frog who is performing a vocal performance at a graduation ceremony, and you can choose to hold key to focus on singing, or release it to remember your times with your friends here. But if you do that, you'll start crying, and the music you sing will go off key. So it's like choosing whether you want to release emotion or hold it back to say goodbye properly. Yeah.
Right, nice. And that's such a sort of nice poignant balance too. And then you guys decided to put these all into a little frame story, which was at the beginning of the trailer, right? Where there are these people who are looking at a comet. Where did that idea come from? And do you feel like how do you feel like it helps the whole experience?
Yeah, I mean, when we decided to go to the microgame collection, we knew we wanted something to kind of package it all up, and yeah, I guess we wanted the idea of the games to build on each other. So rather than these isolated experiences, have kind of a holistic experience. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. All right, you should come and check it out on Thursday at the showcase. But for now, we have to say goodbye. We'll be back in a moment to say goodbye properly with everybody. But right now, we're going to go to an amazing reel of all of the games from graduating students at the Game Center. Not just the 12 you just saw, but a whole bunch more in addition. All smashed together into one amazing reel that will hopefully get those of you in the New York City area to come on down to the Game Center and have a big party with us on Thursday and play all the games that you can fit into 4 hours. All right, so wave goodbye, Hal and Joey. Bye. Okay, thank you so much for watching this whole stream with all of the developers of the 12 games that you just got to see. You should absolutely show up on Thursday night if you want to play any or all of these games in person, in addition to all of the games that you just saw in the Sizzle reel, and even more games that weren't in the reel that we just played. So show up at 6 p.m. NYU Game Center in downtown Brooklyn. The link to RSVP is somewhere on this Twitch page down here. All right, everybody, on the count of 3, I want you to say either the best or the worst thing about making games. Think about that. Like, okay, decide what it is right now. Okay, I'm going to count down to 0. 3, 2, 1. And there you have it, folks. There you have it. Now you know everything that these guys know. Good job. Thank you, everybody. Happy Showcase. Bye-bye.